Hey, this is the Divine Superconductor, sponsored by MitoLife, and I'm here to share with you how to make bee bread. This is a super nutrient dense, you can call it a superfood, I just call it a food. It's a complete food, complete protein. This is excellent for vegans or vegans or vegetarians. And all it is essentially is raw honey fermented with bee pollen. And the magic of bee bread is in the fermented bee pollen. So I have a bunch of bee pollen here, and you can get the granules pretty easy. Usually it's pretty easy to find local bee pollen. But just because you eat the pollen straight doesn't mean you're actually accessing the protein inside. So what the bees do is they actually ferment the pollen to unlock the nutrition inside. So it has a hard cell wall, the bee pollen. Think of it like chlorella or different algae in general. You have to crack the cell wall to get to the nutrition inside, like pine pollen. This is the same idea, and the bees are natural fermenters. They do this. So to make 1 pound of honey takes an average of 20,000 flowers, getting the nectar from the flowers, bringing it back to the hive. The beekeepers actually have little grates, so as the bees are scurrying along this tray, the pollen falls through. And so not all of it falls through, but a lot of it does. So the bees get to keep some for themselves, but a lot of it drops down to where it could be harvested. That's where you get bee pollen. And whether we're talking about raw, unfiltered honey, which unfiltered too is the key, or bee pollen, or propolis, the waxy substance that they use to cork the honey, or royal jelly. All of the things in the beehive are very medicinal, and they're foods. They're one of the few sources of nutrition left on this planet, actually. And so our situation with health, it's a toxicity issue and a starvation issue. And it doesn't matter where on the world you are, it's the same for everybody. Toxicity and starving to death because we're not getting proper nutrition. Even if you're on a Whole30 organic, plant-based, fruits and vegetables diet, you're going to be deficient in nutrients. And it's not just enough to say the soil's mineral deficient. That's not even an accurate statement. How about the soil doesn't have any fulvic acid, doesn't have any microbes, doesn't have any fungus? Now you can't make the plants organic. So that means we're not getting minerals from our green juice. And that's a super red pill. But it's the truth. YouTube, acid rain. Look at the effect that it has. Look at the difference in acidity between fulvic acid and sulfuric and nitric acid. That's a pretty big difference. Pretty big. So this is a food, and this is a way to make something, especially if you're on the go, traveling musician, actor, in your car a lot, just business person, you don't have a lot of time to prepare food. This is excellent. There's only 2 things you need to make it: honey and bee pollen. And you can add extra things. I have some propolis here, which means defender of the hive. It's the waxy substance that holds the hive together. This has a lot of incredible benefits. Each aspect of the beehive has different benefits, and they're all incredible. And remember that fermentation turns proteins into amino acids. It turns carbohydrates into simple sugars, like straight glucose. And even for diabetics, even for people with sugar metabolism issues, go back and see my video where I interviewed my friend Ramat on honey. And he describes it. It's very, very easily digested by the body. And the coolest part to me is that who knows what nutrition we're actually getting in this. A lot of it's undiscovered. We might be getting really novel bacteria because remember, it's fermenting, it's blowing up, it's amplifying, it's replicating the bacteria that's already in the pollen. You got to try it to experience it. That's all I'm going to say. So 12-ounce jar, usually you can get these left over from ghee jars. If you use ghee, little plastic top. These work the best. These are 12 ounces. These I've found are really excellent for making small batches of bee bread. And as you can see, this is my finished one here. And this is hard as a rock. I have to be careful I don't break spoons. But this is going on months old. And remember that this is one of those substances, I mean, especially when it's fermented, that lasts forever. They found honey in Egyptian tombs, even bodies of children mummified in honey in Egyptian tombs. These tomb robbers actually take the honey, and it was just as edible as it was thousands of years ago. It never goes bad. Honey never spoils. So all these doomsday preppers getting these canned garbage things, no. The ultimate survival food is honey. If you have honey and you have a water source, you're good. And if you have pollen and honey in a water source, you're thriving. When it comes to stuff hitting the fan, bee products are where it's at. If you can put some algae in there, maybe some sprouts, you're really good. So I'll literally just, with a 5-gallon pail, I'll just go like this and fill it up. And the ratio is 1-to-1. And that's pretty much all you need to know. If that's all you got from this video, you know how to make bee bread. 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 part pollen to 1 part honey. And that's not a, for sure scientifically accurate ratio. It's just one that I've done that's worked for me. And so then you take the honey. And this actually is pure sage honey. Contains some pollen. It's raw. Got it at the health food store. Ideally you get local honey, but if you're around a lot of GMO crops, it might not be best to do that. I actually see some type of a critter in here, so I'm going to fish it out. That's good. That's when you know you have good honey, is when you see some stuff in there. Is I pour it in. And see how I put the pollen in first. I've learned that over time, just the way to do it. There you go. Almost to the top. I want to leave a little room at the top for it to go back and forth, because that's the last step. And of course, do not waste this. That's pure food. You say, wow, that's pure sugar. No, it's pure honey. It's different. Very easily, this is pre-digested food. When it comes to sustainability of feeding this planet, it's going to come down to bee products and algae. The ocean's getting destroyed with ocean acidification, parasites, heavy metals, mercury, PCBs, dioxins. Seafood's not an option. That's why I created MitoLife, to actually provide a source of DHA and share these teachings of how to actually use it in tandem with the sun and with grounding and these practices to improve your health. And this is a great complement to that lifestyle. This is a food. So this is propolis. This is completely optional. And I just put in about a tablespoon. Boom. Doesn't take much. And what makes this easy is you don't have to mix it by hand, because that would be a nightmare. So let's see here, propolis in there, got the honey, the pollen, pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio. Cap it, this lid, make sure it's secure. That's the key. Really, really tighten it down good. And now you just do this, and you set it upside down, and every time you pass it, or every once in a while, you need to do it more so in the beginning, but as it gets going, you don't have to do it as much. And it's going to mix, and eventually this pollen's going to fall down a little bit as the honey pulls it. And you just keep going like this. Set it down like this, set it down like this, set it down like this, and just maybe 2-3 times a day. If you can only do it twice a day, that's not a big deal. That's okay. Just do it once in the rising and once in the evening. The very last step is just to let it sit for about a week. It really depends on ambient temperature, so I don't want to give you like a time to know that it's done. You'll know that it's done when it actually gets harder. It becomes like a bread. Because right now it's just, you know, honey that's floating around with the pollen. It'll actually look pretty solid. So that's when you know it's done, when it gets thick. It's medicinal, it's a food, it's incredible. There's a lot of information out there about honey and propolis and royal jelly and bee pollen. You could add royal jelly to this, but if you did, you would have to refrigerate it. So the good thing about this one is it doesn't need to be refrigerated, which is awesome. And I forgot to mention you can't actually shake it at first to just get things really moving, but it will mix on its own if you just are patient and let it set. So here's the bee bread making. Check out the best DHA on the planet. Put the link below. And try to go local with your honey and bee pollen. And if you can't, then go to the health food store. But try to go to your co-op first, or your farmer's market, or a CSA, because that's going to be the best quality in general. Stay supercharged.